Welcome students in this e-learning module. This lecture is primarily for the semester 6 students, I mean the third year students, English honors. Today I am going to discuss the novel The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This novel was published in the year 1860, so it is in the mid-Victorian period. And as you know, this Woman in White is included in your paper, optional paper, detective fiction. And of course, it is quite conjoined with science fiction. Now, as I have not discussed this novel in the class, let me just very quickly go through the storyline, the main storyline. We have the character of Walter Hartwright. He is the main protagonist of this story. He is a young teacher of drawing, and he has a very he is like an everyman character, and he is distinguished by a strong sense of justice. Now, Walter Hartwright fell in love with the character Laura Fairley. This character Laura is the female protagonist of this story, and Laura Fairley is a very wealthy woman, very beautiful, educated, wealthy woman, and she is the niece of Frederick Fairley, who is a hypochondriac landowner. Now, Laura Fairley has a half sister named Marian Halcombe. But the main hindrance in the way of the marriage between this Walter Hartwright and Laura Fairley is that Laura has already been betrothed. She is already engaged to Sir Percival Glyde, who is a baronet. Now, a woman who is already engaged to another man cannot marry a boy or a man. If she does, if she marries, or if she proclaims her love for that second man, then she will be considered as a fallible character. So this marriage is not possible. And Walter Hartwright, after getting to know, after knowing this relationship between Laura and Percival Glyde, he is heartbroken and he leaves. Now what happens, this character Percival Glyde is Laura's fiance, and he marries Laura, becomes her husband, but he is the male antagonist of this story. We come to know that Percival Glyde marries Laura not for his love, but to achieve, to acquire Laura's property. Now, in this point, we have to discuss a law which is called as the laws of coverture. What is this laws of coverture? Laws of coverture is a law existed in the Victorian period in England, which states that a woman, after marrying a man, she will lose her right over her property. It means when a man is marrying a woman, concomitantly, the man will not only achieve the hand of his fiancée, he will also acquire the wealth and property of his wife. So a woman does not have any control, any right over her property. She is the object, both sexual object, also the material object of her husband. So this is the laws of coverture, and by applying these laws of coverture, this man Percival Glyde acquires or tries to acquire the wealth of his wife Laura Fairley. Now these laws of coverture was abolished in the year 1882, and it was substituted with Married Women's Property Act, which came into effect in the year 1882. But till 1882, this laws of coverture was prevalent throughout England. Now what happens, this Laura's half sister Marian Halcombe, she gets to know about Percival Glyde's negative aspects of his character. The specialty regarding this character of Marian Halcombe is that she is not attractive but intelligent, and she is resourceful. And she is described as one of the finest creations in all Victorian fiction by the critic John Sutherland. So Marian Halcombe encounters Percival Glyde, and most of you who have gone through the story or who have read the novel, that Laura had another stepsister. The sister name is Anne Catherine, and she is the woman in white, the woman mentioned in the title of this novel. Actually, Laura Fairley's father, Mr. Fairley, fell in love and had a sexual liaison with Jane Catherine, mother of Anne Catherine, and as their sexual union, Anne was born. That is why she resembles, regarding her facial expression or facial characteristic, she resembles very much with Laura. So Anne Catherine has been described as an eccentric young woman distinguished by her insistence on white clothes, and she is the illegitimate daughter of Laura's father. So what Percival Glyde does, he tries to exchange the identity of Laura with that of Anne, and after Anne dies, he puts Laura disguised as Anne in the asylum, and Marian Halcombe got to know about the secret. Meanwhile, Walter Hartwright, the former lover of Laura, returns to England. He got to know about this evil nexus, this conspiracy done by Percival Glyde with the help of his friend named Count Fosco, who has fled from Italy, and their intrigues are exposed. Finally, Sir Percival Glyde is he dies while burning the documents. He actually caught the fire and he dies. So the end is very smooth. It's a very happy ending. Meanwhile, Laura Fairley's uncle Frederick also he dies, and Laura gets the complete authority, complete ownership of her property. So meanwhile, Laura conceives, and she has a son who would be the future owner of her property. So this is how the novel comes to an end. Now let me critically analyze this aspect. The first is the genre. The genre of this novel is very interesting. This novel, although it is included in your detective fiction paper, this novel belongs to the genre of sensational novels. Now, what is this sensational novels? See, The Woman in White is considered by many critics as a prototype of detective fiction. Like you see, Wilkie Collins, the previous novel, The Moonstone. Moonstone is considered as an exemplar of detective fiction. Now, the sensational novels, we do not have the character of the detective. We neither have the procedure of detection, as I've told you in the class, this exercise of deductive logic or inductive logic, or the following of this Van Dyne set of 20 rules. Nothing is there in this novel. So what is this sensational novel? The sensational novels was a literary genre of fiction that achieved peak popularity in Great Britain during the years 1860s to 1870s. So its literary forebears included the melodramatic novels and the Newgate novels. Newgate novels means novel based on the Newgate prison, which focused on tales woven around criminal biographies. So there should be a sensation. It also drew on Gothic fiction and the romantic genres of fiction. The genre's popularity was conjoined to an expanding book market and growth of reading public. So examples of sensational fiction would be, apart from Wilkie Collins, The Woman in White, the other examples are Ellen Wood's East Line, Mary Elizabeth Braddon's Lady Audley's Secret, etc. So the Victorian sensational novel has been variously defined as a novel with a secret. There should be a secret, as we see in this novel, The Woman in White, and the secret will be ultimately exposed. And as a sort of novel that combines romance and realism in a way that strains both modes to the limit. So this novel is set in England, uh, exclusively in 1850s England. Now, this mode of narration is very interesting. The novel is written in epistolary form in a series of records, documents, and letters, combining the first person narratives. In the initial chapters, we have that Walter Hartwright describing the novel, narrating the novel. Then we also have minor narrators such as Mr. Gilmore, Frederick Fairley, Mrs. Catherick. But mind it that the lead characters like Laura Fairley, Anne Catherick, and Sir Percival are not included in the list of narrators. This novel also ends with the narration done by Sir Walter Hartwright. So, a question may come in your exam regarding this narrative strategy implied by the author. So, just keep this in mind. Now, let me come to the critical aspect of this novel. You see, the first would be the oppression of women in the Victorian era. See, Anne Catherick is a very generous, is a very innocent character. She is actually the woman in white who is veiled in white clothes. But what was her fault? She is an illegitimate child. She is born as an illegitimate child out of a pregnancy, out of a wedlock. But that is not her fault. And she has to stay in the asylum, bear torments, agony, and pain. Now, if we come to Laura Fairley, Laura becomes an object as a board in the game of political chess. So this is also an instance where a woman is oppressed. Right. We also have women like Marianne Halcombe, Jane Catherick, Jane Catherick, this woman is considered as a sexual predator because she sort of seduced Laura's father, Mr. Halcombe. So just keep this in mind with due reference to laws of coverture and this which is substituted by Victorian Women's Married Women's Property Act in the year 1882. Now let me come to the next most important part of this novel, most important aspect of this novel, which is the image of new woman. Now what is this new woman? See, new woman, the character of new woman emerged in the Victorian period. These women are very intelligent, they are educated, and they try to assert their own individual rights and femininity. It starts from this Henrik Ibsen, A Doll's House, the character of Nora, a woman who leaves her husband to pursue her own desires. We also have the character of Lindell in Olive Schreiner's story, The Story of an African Farm, published in 1883, a book that addresses themes including feminism, premarital sex, and pregnancy out of wedlock. Now, Thomas Hardy is regarded as a pioneer of characterizing various figures of new women, such as the character of Grace Mulberry in his novel The Woodlanders, published in 1887. So Grace Mulberry is an educated woman whose excellent erudition leaves her intellectually isolated from her friends and family. We also have in Hardy's Jude the Obscure, his last novel published in 1895, the character of Sue Bridehead. She is a new woman. See, Sue Bridehead refused to marry Jude because marrying Jude would necessarily mean the loss of her right over her property and her body. She will just become a sexual object to Jude. That is why she refused to marry. So Sue Bridehead is a new woman, and also in a very famous novel, very popular novel, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the character of Lucy Westenra is also an example of new woman. So see what happens in this case of two characters if placed side by side. So Lucy Westenra is an example of a sexual predator, whereas Sue Bridehead can be regarded as an example of an oversensitive intellectual unable to accept her nature as a sexual being. In this novel, you see The Woman in White, the character of Marian Halcombe can be considered as an example of the new woman. So, she is a proto-feminist character who perfectly embodies the features which later would become the definition of the new woman. She is acutely conscious of the injustice of patriarchy. She cares deeply about women's rights, uses her courage, resolution, and wish to protect women's interest. Now, the story, which was published in early 1860s, at that time the idea of new woman is yet to be circulated or disseminated. Just keep this thing in mind. Most middle and upper class women in 1860s were still confined to domestic sphere. By and large, they do not had they did not have any access to education or exercising their intellectual faculty. So women at that time were denied the chance to have higher education, and this figure of the new woman emerged as an unconventional figure at the end of the 19th century and who defied the oppressive patriarchal social order. So regarding your semester exam, just keep this idea of new woman. It is another, if not the most significant aspect of this novel. So just go through the novel, just read the story, read the novel, go through, just think about the critical aspects that I have discussed. Just go through your study material that I have given you, prepare answers, and you can send it to me. So as of now, be safe, stay at home, and prepare for your upcoming exams.